After a harsh day at work, I finally dragged myself home only to discover the house empty. "Lily?" I called as I climbed the stairs. "I'm back!" "Just a second, Spartan!" she shouted from upstairs. It was a joke we'd kept alive for years. We'd met at a costume party where I'd dressed up as a Spartan. We nearly collided, and as I started to apologize, she poked me in the chest, cutting me off with, "You're Spartan!" I'd pointed back at her and replied, "And I'm Lily," which made her laugh. Coincidentally, her real name was actually Lily. From that day, we'd been Spartan and Lily. We'd been married for what I believed were 5 blissful years. I cracked open a beer, slumped onto the couch, and switched on the 6 o'clock news. Just as the headlines wrapped up, Lily made her appearance downstairs. My jaw nearly hit the floor. She was wearing the little black dress I loved. It barely grazed her mid-thigh, and while the neckline wasn't overly bold, it certainly wasn't modest. The backless style made it obvious she wasn't wearing a bra, and the way her body moved as she walked confirmed everything I needed to know. She even had on the necklace I'd given her for our anniversary last month. I reached for my phone, snapping a picture despite not knowing exactly why. "Wow, I didn't know we had plans tonight," I said. "I'll freshen up and change. So, where are we going?" "We're not going anywhere," she replied casually. "James Hawthorne invited me to dinner and dancing. I'll probably be back late, so don't wait up." The mere mention of James Hawthorne made my blood boil. This guy had been banned from every company event due to his habit of chasing after married women. "It's not like that," Lily defended him. "He's just a guy who got mixed up with a jealous husband." "Well, here's another jealous husband," I snapped, "and I'm not about to let you go out with him." "I don't belong to you," she shot back, giving me a sharp look. "Maybe not," I said, trying to stay calm, "but when we exchanged vows, we committed to each other. That still means something to me. I thought it did to you too." "Oh, don't be so old-fashioned," she sneered with sarcasm. "It's the 21st century. Nobody believes in that stuff anymore. You should have told me earlier. We could have just gotten divorced and moved on." "Divorce?" I repeated, stunned. "What do you mean?" She laughed dismissively and walked out as I grabbed an old bat from the closet. Right on cue, a Lexus pulled up in the driveway. "Here's James," she said, unfazed. "Order yourself a pizza or something." I stepped outside with the bat in hand. "Lily!" I shouted, and as she turned, I impulsively tore the dress off her, leaving her standing there in just a tight black thong and heels. She froze for a second, then darted back inside. I casually approached the Lexus, tapping the bat against my palm as Hawthorne sped off, tires screeching. I nodded at the neighbors, who were clearly entertained by the impromptu scene, then headed back inside to return the bat to the closet. I grabbed another beer since the first one had already warmed and slouched on the couch, waiting for the inevitable storm. Lily stormed downstairs shortly afterward, wearing only a robe, her face twisted in fury. Her angry rant was a mix of frustration and words I could barely keep up with. Some of the things she said, I didn't even know she knew. "What were you thinking?" I asked, genuinely bewildered. "What exactly were you hoping to accomplish?" "I don't know," she admitted, throwing her hands up. "Our lives have just gotten so boring, so routine. We never do anything fun anymore." "Am I only hearing about this now?" I asked. "Each time I tried to do something different, you were either too busy, uninterested, or thought it was stupid. And now you think cheating will fix things?" "I didn't want to lie," she sighed. "I thought if I told you, it wouldn't count as cheating." "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard," I shot back. "Seeing someone else without my consent, that's definitely cheating." "Maybe you'd allow it," she said, looking at me with an odd hopefulness. "You're out of your mind," I said, feeling anger bubbling up. "I need to get out of here before I do something we'll both regret." I grabbed my keys and left before she could respond, heading straight to my favorite bar to clear my head. Daniel, the bartender, handed me a bottle. "What's up? You look like you've lost your best friend." "Maybe I did," I muttered. Came home to find Lily all dressed up, telling me she was going out with James Hawthorne from work. She told me not to wait up. Chris, a friend nearby, chimed in. So you told her no, right? Of course I did, I replied, rolling my eyes. What do you think I am? Just kidding, he smirked. So, what happened next? She gave me the usual talk about how she's not my property and how loyalty is outdated, I said, shaking my head. Can you believe that? It sounds like you didn't buy it, Chris said with a chuckle. Exactly, I replied. Right then, Hawthorne's car pulled up and Lily headed for the door. I grabbed a bat, went outside, and tore her dress right off her in front of everyone. She froze, then realized all the neighbors were watching and hurried back inside. I strolled over to Hawthorne's car, bat in hand, and watched him speed away. That's a wind, Chris laughed. Short-lived, though, I said, sighing. Lily came downstairs again soon after, fuming, ranting about our sex life and claiming that if I'd agreed it wouldn't have been cheating. I didn't know what to say. I knew I had to leave, so here I am. After a few more drinks, I decided it was best to call it a night to avoid risking a DUI. Good night and good luck, Daniel said as I stood up. Thanks, I'm going to need it, I replied. When I got home later that night, Lily was already in bed. I went through my usual routine, changed into my pajamas, and slipped under the covers, keeping my back to her. As I drifted off, I thought I heard her softly crying, but decided not to ask about it. The next morning, Lily was up early, making breakfast. We ate in awkward silence, and after we cleaned up, she started in on the conversation again. Daniel, why can't you see that things are different now? No one really expects to stay with just one person forever, she said. I don't think I'm alone in feeling that way, I replied. And as for being with only one person, we both had other relationships before meeting each other. Do you remember? That's not what I mean, she shot back. We were just kids back then, clueless about anything serious. Now we're older and more experienced, with more to compare to. I don't need any comparison, I replied firmly. I did plenty of that before I proposed. I chose you because I was sure you were the one I wanted forever. When you accepted, I thought you felt the same. Were you lying? No, I wasn't, but she started. But what? I interrupted. Have you changed your mind? Because if you have, maybe we should just get a divorce. I don't want a divorce, I muttered. Well, you can't have it both ways, she countered sharply. If you don't want a divorce, then drop all this nonsense. Lily lowered her eyes, her face hardened. I don't want a divorce, she whispered. Then it's settled, I said, though my conviction was shaky. Despite Lily's assurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't being truthful. Every time she came home late or missed a call, a knot formed in my stomach. The tension grew thick, affecting our intimacy. Things started feeling careful, distant, and cold between us. Finally, I reached a breaking point. Lily, I want a divorce, I said, my voice steady. She looked stunned. But I thought we were okay, she said softly. Do you really think we're fine? I asked. Can you honestly say we're even close to how things used to be? She lowered her gaze and shook her head. Telling my parents was the hardest part. They couldn't understand why we couldn't work things out. When my father-in-law called me one day, I showed him a picture of Lily in a compromising state, and he finally backed off. We faced a lot of questions from family. I tried to spare Lily's dignity by keeping the wine flowing, but ultimately, I had to show them the photo and explain her actions. Her family turned on her, and soon she came to me looking for sympathy. Daniel, is there really nothing I can do to change your mind about the divorce? She asked, her voice filled with desperation. I paused. Then an idea struck me, one I was almost certain she'd hate. All right, Lily, I'll delay the divorce, but on one condition, I said. Her face lit up instantly. Anything, Danielle. Be careful with anything, I warned. It's serious. I'm not worried, she replied with a confident smile. I trust you. Fine, I said. I'll let you see other men if I can date other women too." I thought I saw a glint of amusement in her eyes before she quickly masked it with a sickly sweet smile. "Of course, Daniel," she agreed. "That's fair." What a piece of work, I thought. She probably didn't believe I'd find someone. "There's one more thing," I added. "What?" she asked, looking intrigued. "You can't start dating until I find someone first." She looked delighted, likely assuming she already had someone in mind, while thinking I might struggle to find anyone. To give her a nudge, I added, "If I don't find a date in 2 weeks, you're free to do whatever you want." Her face broke into the biggest smile I'd seen in ages. She threw her arms around me and kissed me. "Thank you, Daniel. You'll see, this will be just what we need." "Yeah," I muttered under my breath. "Maybe it'll fix things, or maybe send them down the drain." A few days later, I told Lily I'd arranged a date and suggested a double date for the following evening. She looked caught off guard, as if she'd expected me to be home alone while she went out. What she didn't know was that I already had my own date lined up, hoping this would finally put an end to the insanity. On Monday, I took an extended lunch break to buy some new clothes, leaving them in my car. By Friday, I'd left work early for a haircut, making sure I was home before Lily. I slipped into the guest room, changed, and freshened up in the shower. When I heard the garage door open, I finished shaving, brushed my teeth, and went to the bedroom to complete my look. Lily looked surprised when I walked out of the guest room with my fresh outfit and new hairstyle, but she quickly regained her composure. "James will pick me up at 6:30, she said. "All right," I replied. "We have a reservation with Olivia at 7. The table's under my name if you arrive before us." I left feeling a hint of satisfaction at her puzzled reaction. Lily had no idea that we'd recently hired a new employee at work, Sophia Gara. Sophia was a striking redhead who caught everyone's attention. Though always professional, she and I had become friendly. Occasionally, she'd flirt, but I'd always discreetly show her my wedding ring. When I asked her to grab a drink after work, she seemed intrigued. I arrived at the bar before she did, staring into my glass. When she walked in, she greeted me with a smile. "So, Daniel, what brings the last Boy Scout out of his shell?" she teased. But her expression quickly softened as she noticed my troubled look. "Oh, Daniel, I'm so sorry," she said gently, placing a comforting hand on mine. "I didn't mean to joke. You look like you've lost something important." My eyes welled up and I turned away, struggling to hold back the tears. Sophia slid her arm around my shoulders and guided me to a table. I took a sip of my drink and she waited patiently, giving me the space to collect myself and share what I was ready to say. "Well," she said after a pause, "there's only one thing to do." "We?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, we," she replied with a serious nod. I chuckled for the first time since Lily dropped the bombshell. "Why are you laughing?" she asked, slightly confused. "I don't know," I admitted, still chuckling. "Just, why me? You don't usually date married men, and you barely flirt with single guys. If the guys at the office thought they had a chance with you, they'd be lining up." She shook her head. "I'm not looking for a fling," she said sincerely. "Like you said, I could be with anyone, but I like you. Maybe it's because you're respectful. You don't look at me like most men do. You notice me, but you treat me with respect and you actually listen. You value my ideas when others brush them off just because they're mine. And honestly, I'm mad at your wife for treating you this way." "Are we on a date or not?" she asked, her tone a bit challenging as she looked at me. I wasn't naive, but I also wasn't clueless. "You're in," I replied, finishing my drink and standing up. I walked Sophia to her car, and she handed me her number before we shared a quick, friendly hug. As she got in, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to take a more interesting turn. Later, when I arrived at her place, she was already by my side before I could even open her door. She was slightly taller than Lily, but still shorter than me. Her emerald green dress hugged her curves, with a slit revealing her toned thigh. Her wavy red hair cascaded down her back, and the neckline of her dress showed more than I'd ever seen Lily wear. As I helped her into the car, she nearly slipped, giving me a fleeting yet enticing view of her smooth, creamy thigh before she adjusted her dress and flashed me a confident smile. "We'll have plenty of time for that later," she teased, her voice smooth. I had to gather myself before starting the drive, still a bit flustered by her laughter and touch. And as if that wasn't enough, she began to rub my thigh, forcing me to focus hard on the road rather than her actions. Thankfully, we reached the restaurant before things got too heated, allowing me to regain my composure. Inside, Lily and James were already there. Though I'd seen James before, his presence that evening didn't particularly stand out. Lily, however, was furious, angrier than I'd ever seen her. James stayed seated, so I didn't bother extending a handshake, just nodded at Lily and helped Sophia into her seat. Lily seemed stunned by my attractive date, and though she looked like she wanted to make a snide remark, she held back. Meanwhile, James couldn't keep his eyes off Sophia's neckline, and Lily had to elbow him to snap him out of it. Dinner started off awkward, but over time it began to feel more like any other evening with two couples, even if these weren't exactly typical couples. After dinner, we went to a club for drinks and dancing. At first, the songs were lively, but when a slow one came on, Sophia pressed herself against me, and I could feel Lily's angry gaze on us. Meanwhile, Lily seemed to be practically grinding on James, drawing more attention than she realized. She remained oblivious to it until James slipped his hand under her dress, touching her inappropriately. I felt a rush of embarrassment for both of them and quickly guided Sophia back to our table. From there, we watched as Lily and James continued their antics until the manager finally asked them to leave. Lily, with tears in her eyes, stormed to the table, grabbed her coat, and left, with James close behind. "Well, you sure know how to show a girl a good time," Sophia joked, giggling. I couldn't help but laugh with her as we returned to the dance floor. Later, as we were leaving, I approached the manager to apologize. "Sorry about our companions," I said quietly. "Don't worry about it," he replied with a reassuring smile. "No complaints from us. Come back anytime." I walked Sophia to her door, intending to give her a quick friendly goodnight kiss, but she surprised me by pulling me close for a passionate kiss. "Would you like to come in for a nightcap?" she asked, her eyes gleaming with a hint of something more. I sensed that she was offering more than just a drink, and I wasn't about to argue. She led me to the sofa, sitting close, her dresses slit, catching the light as she adjusted herself, and looked at me with a confident smile. Leaning back slowly, her posture was relaxed, yet certain, and we exchanged a quiet, knowing glance. The tension between us was unmistakable, yet it felt deeper than just the physical. Before I realized it, she slipped down to the floor, her fingers working to unbutton my trousers in a slow, almost teasing manner. I struggled to keep my composure, and when she finally leaned back on me, her warmth pressed close. The experience felt entirely different from my time with Lily. Lily had always claimed such closeness was demeaning, but Sophia saw it differently. Eventually I lay beside her, and she nestled against me, resting her head on my shoulder. As we lay there, a sudden thought struck me. "Sophia," I said, a bit nervous, "I forgot protection." "It's all right," she reassured me, sensing my worry. "I'm on the pill." I lifted her chin, kissing her softly, our tongues meeting in a gentle rhythm. I lost track of time, feeling like only moments had passed before we both drifted into a peaceful sleep. Lying there, I couldn't help but recall Lily's comment that our relationship had grown stale. If anything, my time with Sophia had shown me that maybe the problem wasn't with me. The next morning, we went about our routine, showering separately. While Sophia wrapped up, I prepared breakfast. She smiled upon seeing what I'd made. "Looks like you're talented in more than one way," she teased, adding with a playful grin, "I could get used to this." As we sat down to eat, I felt a mix of emotions. "Sophia, I really like you," I admitted. "Last night was The most alive I've felt in a long time, but I need to figure things out with my marriage first. Even if Lily and I end up divorcing, I'm not sure I'd be ready for something serious right away." She looked at me with understanding. "Don't worry, Daniel," she said gently. "I like you too, and if things work out, I could definitely see us together. But you're right, you need to handle things with Lily first." After breakfast, we spent some time chatting casually. The conversation didn't mean much, but it helped clear my head. I knew I needed to return home and face the situation with Lily. When I arrived, I found her at the kitchen table, her eyes puffy from crying. My more relaxed demeanor seemed to worsen her mood, and she broke into tears again. I poured myself a coffee and sat down across from her. "So, how was your night with James?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It was terrible, Daniel," she sobbed. "I couldn't stop thinking about you and Sophia. She's so perfect, and I feel like I can't compare." "You wouldn't feel like you're competing if you hadn't started this whole mess," I replied quietly, my tone firm but calm. Lily avoided my gaze but nodded as if she knew I was right. "Maybe I'd feel less regret if it were just me and James alone at home," I added, my voice softening a bit. She looked up, her tearful eyes meeting mine, then nodded slowly. "I don't know what to do anymore. Part of me wants to just start over, maybe with someone else, but then I look at you and see the man I married, the one I loved. I don't see someone cruel, just someone who made a mistake." Her vulnerability was evident, and in her eyes I could see a glimmer of hope. "I'm going to change and get out for a bit," I said, feeling the need for a break. "When I get back, we'll talk again." "Please, Daniel, don't make me leave," Lily pleaded, her voice shaking. "How can we fix this if we're apart? I need you now more than ever." "You don't get it," I replied, my frustration evident. "This isn't just about getting back together. Maybe you should have realized how much you needed me before you chose to do this." I turned and went upstairs, leaving Lily seated at the table. When I came back down, she was still there, looking at me with hope in her eyes. I shook my head sadly and left the house, intent on letting her feel the gravity of our situation. I walked down to the Charles River, needing space to clear my mind. Sitting on a bench, I watched the rowers and sailboats pass by, a deep sadness settling in as I wondered if I'd ever have the family I'd once envisioned with Lily. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, but as the sun began to set, I took a deep breath and slowly headed home. When I entered, Lily was still at the table, her gaze locked onto me. I simply shook my head and headed up to my room, locking the door behind me. I lay down on the bed, fully dressed, covering my eyes with my hand. I don't know how long I stayed like that, before I heard a soft knock on the door and Lily's voice. "Daniel?" I didn't respond, and after another light knock, I heard her footsteps moving toward the guest room. Once I was sure she had gone to bed, I took a quick shower, hoping it would calm my mind, but my sleep was restless. The next morning, I went downstairs to find that Lily had made breakfast. Despite everything, I realized I was hungrier than I expected, though Lily hardly touched her food. "Daniel," she began quietly, her voice hesitant, "do you think we could try seeing a counselor?" I considered it for a moment. I didn't know much about therapy, and part of me worried they'd try to make me see things from Lily's perspective. But I also wasn't ready to give up. My time with Sophia had shown me just how stale our relationship had become. Did I really want to go back to that? Despite my anger at Lily for how she'd handled things, I still cared for her. I couldn't walk away without at least trying. "All right, Lily, here's the deal," I said firmly. She nearly jumped in her seat. I don't want a therapist whose sole focus is saving our marriage. Whether it can be saved or not isn't the point. I won't accept any hidden agendas." Her face showed a flicker of disappointment, as if she'd hoped for someone who would assure us that everything could be fixed, but she agreed. Surprisingly, the counseling session turned out to be productive. Lily was forced to confront how her lack of communication had impacted our relationship, and I realized I needed to be more assertive. We discussed what we truly wanted from each other, and it wasn't just about physical intimacy. It was about connection. Even so, Lily couldn't shake her insecurities about Sophia. Despite my reassurances that while I had feelings for Sophia, it wasn't love, it was a reaction to our situation. But Lily struggled to fully accept it. Eventually, we both reached the painful conclusion that parting ways was necessary. The divorce went through, and I took time to reflect on my life. I didn't immediately reach out to Sophia. Instead, I booked a stay at a bed and breakfast along the Mina coast. The weather was as unpredictable as my mood, but I needed time to think and relax. When I returned, I called Sophia, and we went to dinner. Although we spent the night together afterward, it felt more like a step forward in healing than anything driven by passion. Our connection was strong, but it was more about comfort and discovering a new direction. The next morning, as we lay in bed, Sophia looked over at me. "Penny for your thoughts, Daniel." I paused before replying. "I was just thinking about how easy it would be to ask you to stay with me, to make this something permanent. But I know the easy way isn't always the right way." She smiled, slightly teasing. "Get your mind out of the gutter. I don't just mean that," she said, her tone softening. "I really like you, and I know I could fall for you. But with my divorce still fresh, I think it might be unfair to both of us if we dive into anything serious right away. I think we should see other people for a while," she continued, "while still seeing each other. I can't promise how long this will last, and I won't ask you to wait for me." I wanted to protest, but I knew deep down she was right. We went through our usual routine, showering separately and sharing a quiet breakfast. There was a certain tension in the air, and while I was tempted to ignore our agreement and push for more with Sophia, I held firm. I think she felt the temptation too. After cleaning up, she walked me to the door, and we hugged. "I think this is goodbye," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "No, I don't agree," I said, pulling back to meet her gaze. "Let's have dinner in 2 weeks, just to check in on how things are going." She nodded slowly, kissed me on the cheek, and gently guided me out the door. As it clicked shut behind me, it felt painfully final, like a door closing on a chapter of my life. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd just made a huge mistake. I spent the rest of the week questioning everything. By Friday, I decided to go out for dinner and drinks with some friends to clear my head. We were settled in a booth when I spotted Sophia entering with a tall, attractive man. I was torn between going over to say hello or respecting our agreement. Eventually, I chose to stay back, feeling a pang of disappointment at how quickly she'd moved on. Part of me wanted to be angry, but I knew I wasn't any better. I waited until she went to the restroom, left cash on the table, and quietly said goodbye to my friends. Maybe it was cowardly, but I couldn't face her. I felt a strange mix of anger toward Sophia for not waiting longer and frustration with myself. We'd both made a choice to see other people, and here I was, struggling with it already. It became clear to me that I needed to move forward as well. I was still a good catch, and I wasn't going to waste any more time. I quickly set up a date for the following Friday with someone new. Rachel Stevens, a secretary for one of my clients with whom I'd had some light flirtatious exchanges in the past. When I mentioned my divorce, Rachel didn't hesitate. She'd always been attractive in a professional sense, but when she opened the door for our date, I was taken aback by how amazing she looked. "I think I'm well prepared," she said with a playful smile. "That's an understatement," I replied, admiring her effortless style. I helped her with her coat and we headed out. The conversation at dinner started with the usual light first date topics, but before long, we ended up talking about my divorce. Rachel seemed genuinely shocked by Lily's choices. Over coffee and dessert, I decided to be straightforward. "Rachel, I want to be honest with you," I began. Before my divorce was finalized, I was seeing someone, and now that it's over, things with her have become more serious. But we agreed to date other people before committing to anything. I don't want you to feel like a rebound. I'm open to seeing where things go, but I'm not looking for a serious relationship right now. Her response was reassuring. Daniel, it's only our first date. I'm not expecting anything serious. I appreciate your honesty. Let's just see how things develop. We spent the rest of the evening getting to know each other, and the night ended with a warm kiss and plans for the next Saturday. Meanwhile, I had arranged to meet Sophia for dinner, uncertain of how it might go. When she arrived, she was as stunning as ever. During dinner, she turned serious. "You know, I saw you, right?" she asked after we'd ordered. I looked at her, curious. "I saw you out with your friends the other night," she continued. "I was going to say hi, but when I came out of the restroom, you'd already left. I felt slightly embarrassed. I know we agreed to see other people, but seeing you with someone else so soon made me jealous," she admitted. "It's silly, I know. Sophia, you don't need to be jealous," I said gently. "Jack is an old friend I hadn't seen in a while, so when he called, I figured dinner would be nice. It wasn't anything serious." "No need to apologize," she replied with a faint smile. "If it bothered me, that's on me." Her expression shifted slightly, her eyebrow arching. "Should I be jealous?" she teased. "I wouldn't worry about that," I replied. "I do have another date set up tomorrow night, but we both agreed there's no commitment, just two people enjoying each other's company." "That's nice," she said, though her smile held a trace of wistfulness. "You deserve a good time." We didn't linger on the topic. Our food arrived and we moved on to lighter subjects. Later, as I opened the car door for her, I asked, "Want to go dancing?" "No," she said quietly. "I think it would be best if you just took me home." The drive was silent, her gaze fixed out the window. At her door we shared a kiss, more intense than either of us likely expected, before parting. "I will," I promised. "Good night, Sophia." I quickly headed to my car, hoping she hadn't noticed the conflict in my eyes. My date with Rachel went well. Our goodbye kiss was surprisingly passionate, and while we shared some light touches, we both agreed to stop before it went too far. I kept in touch with Sophia weekly, though we never met up again. I wasn't sure if we were both avoiding it subconsciously or if fate was at play. I saw Rachel a few more times, and while we had fun, there was no strong connection. After our third date, Rachel dropped a surprising statement. "Daniel, I think this should be the last time," she said. "Oh, I thought things were fine," I replied, taken aback. "Maybe they were, until recently," she said, looking uncertain. Daniel, when we first started, we agreed it would be casual. I was clear that I wasn't looking for anything serious, and back then, I had no feelings for you. But now that's changed." She paused, taking a breath. "If we keep this up, we might end up in a place I'm not ready for. I'd rather end things now before it gets too deep and we both get hurt. I hope that makes sense." Her words stung, but in a strange way, I understood. It didn't make it easier, but I knew I'd move on. I stood, kissed her forehead, and headed for the door. "Good night, Rachel." "Goodbye, Daniel," she replied, her sad smile and teary eyes conveying what words couldn't as I left. With Rachel out of the picture, I reflected on my next steps. I went on a few dates, mostly brief encounters and short relationships, but none led anywhere meaningful. Eventually, I realized what I'd been missing all along and decided it was time to make a call. "Hello, it's Daniel," I said, realizing she could see my name on her caller ID. "Sophia, I don't know where you are right now, but I'm done with the casual scene. I'm ready to settle down, and if you're still open to it, I want to come back." A long pause followed, and I felt a pang of worry. Maybe I'd missed my chance. "How soon can you be here?" she finally asked. "What? I thought things were fine," I replied, surprised. "Maybe too fine," she answered, leaving me even more confused. "Daniel, we both agreed on no commitments when we started. At first, I didn't feel anything, but now I'm starting to. If we keep going, we might end up somewhere I'm not ready for. I'd rather end this now than let it grow too deep and cause pain later. I hope you understand. Good night, Rachel." "Goodbye, Daniel," she replied with a sad smile, her eyes misty. I closed the door behind me, wondering what came next. I had a few brief relationships after that, but none became serious. Eventually, I realized what was truly missing and picked up the phone. "Hello, it's Daniel," I said, forgetting she'd see my name on the caller ID. "Sophia, I'm done with the casual dating. I've had more ups and downs than a pinball machine, and I'm ready for something serious. If you're still open to it, I want to come home." Another pause followed, and a pang of worry hit me. Maybe I'd missed my chance. Lily hadn't left town in shame. She lived quietly with her cats, not seeking work in questionable places. While I wasn't especially interested, I'd heard through friends that she was dating casually, though nothing serious seemed to be happening. Sophia had even suggested inviting Lily to our wedding. I was unsure but didn't object. Lily declined the invitation but sent a thoughtful gift. I was surprised when Sophia and Lily struck up a casual friendship, meeting for coffee and shopping together. While it felt strange, I didn't think much of it. About 6 months after we married, I came home one night to find Sophia dressed up and ready to head out. "Oh, here we go again," I thought. But thankfully, my worries were misplaced. "Go get changed," Sophia said. "We're meeting Lily at Olivia's for dinner." "I know you two have gotten close, but isn't this a bit much?" I asked. "Don't worry, there's a reason," she replied with a mischievous smile. I knew better than to argue when she had a plan, so I shrugged and went to change. When we arrived, Lily was already there, and the atmosphere was as awkward as you might expect. Sophia and Lily exchanged a cheek kiss while I stood there, feeling like an outsider. Neither of us knew what to say, but finally, Lily broke the silence. "Daniel, good to see you. You look great." "Thanks, Lily. You look good too." Soon, we were seated at our table. Sophia stopped to chat with a man at the counter before returning, and I leaned over to ask her, "What's all this about?" "Don't worry about it, honey," she replied with a smile. "Every husband knows that when his wife says nothing, it often means something, and you should probably be concerned." But I had no choice but to go along with it, hoping for the best. Lily sat on my right with Sophia across from her. Before we could even order drinks, the owner came over with Jack. Sophia greeted him warmly, gave him a hug, and seated him to my left, directly across from Lily. It became clear that Sophia had a plan, and my worst fears weren't coming true. Still, the night could have taken a wrong turn, but thankfully, Lily and Jack hit it off, and the conversation flowed easily through dinner. By the end of the evening, it felt like we were all just old friends. When it was time to leave, Jack and I split the bill, and as Sophia and I were leaving, Lily and Jack decided to stay for a drink at the bar. Sophia was so confident, and I couldn't even feel upset. Though it might not last, they seemed to be off to a good start. We kept things friendly with Lily and Jack, though we didn't see them often as a couple. When we did, it was usually in group settings, and their relationship seemed steady. Lily no longer felt the need to create drama, and we wished them well. Sophia and I couldn't have been happier, though, I'll admit, the baby's nightly kicks certainly kept her awake.